Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Now, so we will start with Daniel, and later we will receive two representatives from the SMEs envoy network, Andre Meyer and Marcus Hell. So today is about what is the SME envoy network, or how can we collaborate, relate with them. Something that is very, very, very important and interesting. So I don't know what time is it. Yeah, it's 8:31. So we need to start. Daniel, it's your floor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let
me try to get this full screen mode.
You are not sharing your screen yet.
It's coming up. Now I am selecting. Can you see this?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Go on.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Antonio, and thank you, everyone, for this little chance to share what we're doing at the Smart City Cluster in the fight against coronavirus. We have been working to make cities better since 2014. At the Smart City Cluster, we represent only the industry. We don't have any public administrations inside. We have around 80% of members are companies, private companies, and the rest is public universities, the science and technology parks, and other associations, mainly technological. What we do is what you can see in this little sketch is just connect the offering of the industry to the analysis of the needs and the challenges of the cities. So we had a very clear one in this fight against coronavirus. I'm going to be very straight to the point because our concept of smart cities is the one that has the benefit of the citizen at the center. We are not pushing for technology, we are pushing for well-being of the citizens, and we use technology as a means. And this technology has given us a very good chance to support the cooperation between cities and citizens in order to establish a good fight against coronavirus. In Spain, people have been very supportive of the lockdown and have proven leadership from the bottom. And together with these smart city solutions, we have turned the trend around, and we can say that now we are getting better results thanks to this. At the beginning, the companies of the cluster started providing their solutions for free, many of them. We even had an entry on our website that has a collection. If you want to look into it, there is a big collection. We're going to present 3 of the examples of what these solutions have been to help the city councils team up with the citizens to fight against the virus, because many cities were already looking into implementing smart city solutions, so they were already on the right direction, and they had it very easy to incorporate new tools to get this information. The first example that we have here is the ESRI Spain. They are the inventors of the geographical information system. They are nearly standard worldwide. It's very widely adopted in many city councils around the world, and they quickly set up a template so that each city council could create their own response hub, integrating many layers of information, so that the analysis could be made by the city itself and take decisions into what could be best and what's happening in their actual city. They gave this tool for free. They gave support to personalize the hub for every city, and there is dozens of portals, data portals for each city that have been created in these past few weeks. and some of them will probably remain in the future, and some of them will just stop there. Here is an example of what it looks like in the city of Valencia. If you look at the graph, you can see how the weekly trend, you have 1 dot per day, and you can see what the traffic was at first before the lockdown, and then the results of this lockdown, which is that the traffic came drastically down, and those little lows that you see Saturday and Sunday, so you can see between the difference between work days and weekdays. And there is the traffic, and then there's other graphs for use of public transport, water consumption, and also many other variables that you can choose from. Another example, this is a piece of news actually from yesterday. This was communicated yesterday afternoon. This is the mayor of Fuengirola. This is a touristic city in the province of Malaga, and they have announced the implementation of a system to monitor the amount of people in beaches and public spaces in order to help maintain safety distance, so-called social distance. This uses a mechanism that has a geographic information system, some sensors, and also an artificial intelligence algorithm, which many people call artificial intelligence, lots of things nowadays, but and eventually some processing that can help the authorities manage what is actually happening. Fuengirola is a city that multiplies their population by 3 in the summertime because of so many tourists and people who have their second residence there. There's not so many people in the winter, but lots of people in the summer go to the beach there. And this is a tool that's going to help maintain safety distance in the beaches and the public open spaces. And a third example, and this is the last example for today, this is a citizen app that also dozens of cities are implementing in Spain, and it's also started to be used in the United States. That is a bi-directional communication tool between the citizen and the city council, the city managers. Actually, you can report things that are not going well in the city. For example, some broken infrastructures or potholes on the roads or a broken street lamp or something like that. And you can communicate it on this tool. This is an app on your phone, and you can also get feedback from the city. So both parts are informed at the same time. This is very good for the citizen and knows what's happening with their incidents, and also for the managers that know if the people are happy with the work. They have created one new section for coronavirus that can help report needs for sanitation or other problems that could be arising in the city. And of course, I'm happy to discuss this with anyone. Thank you very much.
You are really welcome, Daniel. Congratulations, because I need to say that you are one of the strong workers in the fight against coronavirus in Spain, at least from my perspective, and congratulations for everything you are doing from your clusters and from yourself. Okay.
Anything we can do, really, we're happy.
You are making a difference. Now we are welcome. I want to welcome also the two representatives from the SMEs envoy networks, Andre Meyer and Marcus Herr. We will hear them. They will explain us what they are doing, and later we will go deeper in what kind of needs and solutions we could relate with them. Okay. Welcome, Andre. Are you going to speak first?
Good morning. Good morning, Antonio. I will be. Do you hear me? Yes, I think you do.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes. I'm going to be very brief and just introducing Marcus, and then I come back, and then we are both ready for any questions. Well, you should never say that we're not ready for any questions. Hopefully,
yes,
we are.
exactly.
Jokes aside.
Might be promising
So-
too much.
well, Marcus, you speak after me, so I can promise a lot of things. No. So, jokes aside. I quickly gave a presentation of what the SME Envoy network is a few days ago on this channel, so I'm not going to repeat the same things. Just saying that in your context, I would claim we are the political cluster, or the policy cluster, is perhaps a better term. I'm today not alone, as you said. I'm with my colleague Marcus Hell, one of members of our economist team, and he will shortly present what they are doing to give us the sort of base for evidence-based policy making, and that since many years. I will therefore shut up and hand over to Marcus, and then I come back in after he has finished, okay?
Thank you very much,
Perfect.
Marcus. I'm giving you the presentator rights now.
Mm-hmm.
You should be
Perfect.
able to share your screen.
Yes, I will try. Right. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Okay,
we are.
very good. Yes. So thanks very much for the invitation and for giving us the opportunity to speak. What I'm going to give a very brief overview, a very short presentation of what we're doing in DG Grow's SME strategy unit to measure SME performance more generally, and also a bit specifically what we're doing on reacting to the coronavirus crisis, because it's quite hard, of course, to keep an overview with the situation developing so quickly. And currently, our main tool to measure SME performance is the annual SME performance review, which is an annual analysis of SME performance, SME policies across all EU member states. And it's based on a variety of indicators, around 100 different indicators from public sources, private sources. So really quite a broad overview of different types of indicators. And in the analysis, these indicators are divided into 10 different dimensions, which are based on the Small Business Act, which was adopted in 2008. And these dimensions are things like internationalization, access to finance, responsive administration. And on each dimension, each EU country is compared to the EU average. And for us, this setup has proved very useful, in particular, the idea of not giving an overall score on SME performance, but looking at different dimensions, because really what we've been doing this review for more than 10 years now, and what we've seen every year is that there's no country that's perfect across all 10 dimensions. Even some countries that are doing really well in most dimensions still have some dimensions, for example, access to finance, where they're weaker. This really allows for the opportunity for each country to learn from each other. There's no country that can just rest on its laurels, so to speak, and relax and say, oh, we're doing everything perfectly anyway. There's always areas where they can do better, and also even countries that are doing below the EU average in several dimensions will still have some dimensions where they're doing very well. And this is very important for the whole process, because when we're talking about the data gathering and data analysis, it's the results of it, they don't feed into hard legislation immediately, but rather feed into a learning process. The whole process is designed to work together with the European semester. So our data analysis feeds into the annual country reports and later on the country-specific recommendations as well, which if there's a specific issue for SMEs in those countries or on specific dimensions that we could see from our analysis, then we're trying to give specific recommendations and also try to identify some policies from other countries that are doing well in this area. Now, I've said before that the SPR is based on the Small Business Act from 2008, so the legislation it's based on is by now quite a little bit not out of date. It is still relevant today, but of course the situation has changed. We have adopted a new SME strategy in March, and of course with the whole COVID-19 crisis, the whole economic situation for SMEs has changed, and really our old tools are still fit for purpose but need to be tweaked a little bit and need to be redesigned. And that's what we're doing at the moment, looking at how to integrate some of these new developments, also looking at new dimensions such as digitalization, which have already become more and more important, but in the context of the COVID crisis are going to become even more important. Having said all of this, I would like to stress that there is a big caveat that because this is quite a scientifically rigorous analysis, there is quite a bit of time delay in between the data, in between the reference period of the data and the actual publication of the review. So it can't be a tool that really measures SME performance in real time. For example, now during the COVID crisis, it can be more of a tool that maybe in a year or so will look back on the crisis and describe the effects that it has on SMEs, and maybe identify some policies that have worked in supporting SMEs. I've included the link in the presentation as well for the last version of the review has been published at the end of last year, so you can have a look at the past versions of the review. But as I just said, it's not a tool to measure the performance in real time. So this is why recently, in the last couple of weeks, we've also started compiling a table of national economic support measures for SMEs, which is also compiled by the SME country desk officers, who are the experts for their country also in the course of the SME performance review. But it's much less scientifically rigorous. It's much more based on a variety of different sources. It could be national sources, can be business associations, SME associations, the SME envoys. And it's supposed to be much more of an overview, a living document that gives a general overview of what countries are doing to support SMEs and to identify some of the common measures. For example, what we've noticed is that clearly financial guarantees, wage subsidies, and deferral of taxes are measures that have by now been implemented in every single EU member state. And but also maybe identify some measures that aren't as widely used but could be quite interesting. For example, there's some countries that have made it easier for restaurants to offer delivery services or takeaway services. And what we've seen now over the last couple of weeks is, at the beginning, there was a lot of movement. Countries were announcing new measures day by day. And now the situation has become more settled. Most countries have announced their main measures, have adopted them. But for us now, the focus is really shifting a bit to how are these measures actually being implemented on the ground? Do they actually reach the SMEs they're targeting? And can businesses actually get the money that has been promised by public sources? So this is where we're starting now to gather feedback again from business associations, from national contacts. But this is also where we can really see a role for the Clusters Alliance as well, because you really know the situation on the ground, how it works for industry. So we can really see grounds for cooperation there. So that's it from my side. Thanks for the attention, and I'll pass back to Andre, who wanted to close with a few words.
Thank you very much. Andre, your turn.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Marcus, for this. So Marcus very much described the problem that we have with getting data sort of in more or less real time. And I would like to echo his last sentence. We're relying in this context, because speed is of the essence here, on information from guys like you, from entrepreneurs, from association of entrepreneurs. We are getting this information, but it's slow. And just to be clear on this, this is not about pointing the finger to somebody and says, oh, that and that politician promised something and it's not delivered. We all know that there are so many problems in the delivery of measures like this that are exacerbated in a situation that we are in. Lots of things still demand physical signatures, for example. That has changed fast, but still. So there are bank loans that are then not being able to be given because they demand a physical signature or a counter signature from a notary or something like that. So all these things are difficult, and it is not about naming and shaming. It's about helping, because a lot of SME policy on the European level is soft law. I think I said that also in my first presentation a few days ago, meaning we don't have so many regulations and directives in our arsenal. And I repeat what I said back then and what I always say: this may be seen as a inconvenience or as a weakness of SME policy, but in reality, it gives us a very, very wide variety of things we can do. Okay, the downside is you don't have the sort of baseball bat in your hand of going to the court for infringement procedures or something like that. But you have the possibility to convince people, to cajole people, to show them best practices, and at times to say, look, you promised something and you're not delivering. Your rules are not adapted to the situation and so on. And this is the moment here to say to people, look, this is very nice that you promised a fast loan of, I'm inventing now, yeah, but I'm not so far away from reality. 15,000 euros within a few days, but in reality, the banks that are applying the rules are still asking for the same 19 pages document to be filled in that they normally do, although it's 100% state guarantees. Yeah? And these are the things where we need to help, and it's very often the case. And then I'm closing, and we're ready for questions. It's very often the case that those who are voting these measures into law are doing their best and having all the good intentions, but they sometimes covering the highway to hell unintentionally because they're not going the last mile and discuss, to stick with my example, with the bank to say, look, we guarantee this amount 100%. You don't have to worry too much about collateral and so on. Worry about fraud, that's fine, but don't worry too much about collateral because we're here to guarantee that amount. And these are the measures, these are the messages that we need to pass on. So that is the basis of our work. And for that, the data that Marcus and his colleagues are collecting are both in the medium run and now also in the short run quite important. And that would be all from me, and happy for questions.
Thank you very much, Andre. It's very clear, very well stated the situation and the need. So comments, question from the rest. 3 minutes maximum, please.
I see already there's a question whether we gather data on national or regional level, and I can just say a few words on that. So mostly it's data on national level. Most of our indicators are based on national data, and the comparisons are done on a member state level. However, we are also interested in the regional level, and for example, one of the indicators, one of the family of indicators that we use is the World Bank's Doing Business indicators, and in cooperation with DG Regio, we are also funding the World Bank to do subnational doing business indicators as well. So they look at some of the biggest regions or biggest cities in some countries. This is still ongoing, and it won't necessarily be part of the annual SME performance review, but we are also looking at regional data and would like to increase that in the future, actually.
Thank you. More questions or comments? Hervé, are you going to speak? If not, I have one. For those need some feedback from the field, did you have designed it as some kind of questionnaire or a formulary, or do you have kind of guidelines for the information that you want to retrieve?
No, we try not to be so formalistic. We have 25 million SMEs out there of all kinds, and there's always the tentative to send an email to all of them and then ask and send them a questionnaire. But in reality, we are much more into anecdotal but correct evidence, in the sense of if a company calls us and says, look, I applied for one of these fast loans, and to stick with my example from before, now I have to fill in all sorts of documents and bring all sorts of proof. I will not be able to do that. Then this is something we can take up, especially if this is not just the one company. But normally the problems are not experienced by only one. And if it corroborates a picture that we have, then we will go to the national authorities and say, look, guys, it just doesn't work, or it seems not to work. So don't worry about formalities. If there is something, send it to us.
Thank you. And who will be the contact? You, Andre, or?
Well, the easiest is an email address, which is a functional mailbox, which is for the SME envoy network, which is well, I'll put it in the chat. Perhaps that's the easiest. Yeah.
Please do that. Yes, Rasa, I see that you are willing. Welcome, Rasa.
I have one question about the guarantees and the banks. Are we talking just about the COVID measures? Because I do consult a lot of young enterprises or startups, and usually right now the state support is raised up to 90 to 100%, but we do have this problem in Lithuania that the bank is asking a guarantee, or the financing agency is asking a guarantee from the bank to give you an advance. So, and this problem just stops the startup, as if there is some money for prototype developing from a state, from a financing agency, but you cannot reach it because you have to provide the guarantee from the bank, and the bank says, oh, you're too young. And it's not only a COVID-based problem, but it's also connected with the COVID.
Raza, I'm not an expert on financial support, but we can bring them next time. But sorry, I'm having a bit of problems with my phone doesn't fall on me, and then you see the ceiling of my office or something like that. So here I am. In the rules, or the sort of the basic set of rules, or the idea behind European financial support to companies, forget for a moment the COVID crisis, is that we're not financing stuff that better not be financed. I'm always using the same example. Not all of you know Brussels so well, but I think you will understand what I mean. That somebody who wants to open the 25th sandwich shop in the area where the European institutions are placed should not get public funding. That's not. It's fine. I wish that person all the luck and everything, and I might go there and buy my sandwich, but that's not something that should get public funding from nobody in my mind. But that's at least not from the European level. The idea behind it is essentially that you would reduce the collateral demands, and that you be, I think it's about a basis point or a basis point and a half cheaper than bank loan, but not to squeeze out bank loan, but to help where bank loans are not available. Now, in the COVID crisis, we have made a number of things available, and quite some money has been put into the system, which is slowly arriving on the company floor, or rather in the company accounts. But the problem that you are raising, that startups are, so to say, on the one hand attracted and then told that they're too young, is a problem that I don't think we will solve. Also because there is behind a lot of European financing a sort of guarantee system. And you don't need me to tell you that a guarantee system only works if the guarantee is not too often called. So if I may say, the failure rate is not too high. So there has to be some sort of assessment how bankable, to use this term, the product or service that somebody proposes is, and hence my example with the sandwich shop. But that is something we will not overcome with European finance.
Thank you very much. Hervé? No, we are not hearing you. Hervé? No sound. No sound. No. No. So, Frank? Frank, would you speak? I
Yes.
see that you have.
No.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, I don't speak.
Ah, no. Okay, I saw your mic on. Okay. Another one?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we hear you, Hervé.
Good morning, everybody. Marcus, thank you for your presentation, and Andre as well. Marcus, I was curious to know if we could get from you the hundreds of indicators you have for SMEs. I would be really interesting to cross-view those indicators with a work we are currently doing regarding the review of the WUL methodology for cluster labeling, and we have as well some indicators. I would like to cross-view those respective bunch of indicators and hopefully to find common interest in the future.
Yes, thanks. In the presentation, I included a link. I'll share the presentation afterwards with Antonio, and I'll also copy the link into the chat. So on our website, there's also a few links to all the methodology and a full Excel table of all the indicators as well that we use. It's a big Excel table because it's 100 indicators. So if you want it in a different format, please feel free to get in touch with me at any point. I'm also happy to send them to you. And it's also good that you mentioned that you also have a couple of indicators, because we're also constantly on the lookout for new indicators that maybe we've overlooked so far, or that could give us a better idea of what we want to look for. So that's definitely something we're interested in. And yes, I'll definitely share with you the indicators and the link that shows them.
That opens
Excellent.
a very, very good, interesting question, because we have been speaking about resilience during the past weeks, especially the past days. I don't know if you are measuring in any way the resilience of the SMEs, or for sure not probably the ecosystems. Okay, but it will be something interesting to think about.
It definitely is, yes. It's not among our main dimensions or main indicators at the moment, but it's definitely an interesting topic and only getting more important. So any ideas on that are definitely welcome.
We should work on that.
And Marcus, just to hand up. So with Antonio, who is as well very strongly involved in that work, we plan to install in the future, but in the near future, let's say, a dedicated working group on KPIs for clusters. And would you maybe agree the principle to join that working group? It would be definitely relevant to have your inputs in this, reflection.
In principle, yes. Obviously, we need to know a little bit more about how the working group functions and everything. But I'm certainly, there's no question, I'm happy to join at any point, like this morning, to present some of our work or to discuss some of our work. If it's on a more regular basis, then it might be a bit of a more formalized process. But in principle, I'm definitely happy to get involved.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will keep you posted on progress on this. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. Annie.
Yeah, good morning all. I have also a question on those indicators. I was wondering if the indicators on company performance, I understand you can make a long list of indicators, but do you also have indicators on system level? For example, how an SME is participating to an ecosystem?
We don't have anything specific on ecosystems, but overall our indicators are actually more system level than company level. We don't look at individual company performance. It's more around the business environment. So for example, in access to finance, it's about the cost of loans for small businesses compared to large businesses. Or on internationalization, it's the percentage of companies that are active internationally. So it's not really on the individual company level that we look at. It's more on the business environment more widely.
Yeah. But no specific indicators on ecosystem, because in the cluster approach in Flanders, at least, we are not looking at indicators on ecosystem level and how each of the cluster members participate to that.
Yes, no, at the moment we don't have any indicators on the ecosystem specifically.
Okay, thank you.
But if I may come in on this, Annie, may I, Antonio?
Sure.
Yeah. There is another level of cooperation that we're having that may be in part answering your questions, or at least sort of adding something to it. We're closely cooperating with the Committee of the Regions on their EER scheme. EER stands for European Economic Regions. We always claim that these are the Silicon Valleys of Europe, and we have 24 of them, whilst America has only one. These are regions that are the sort of vanguard, and I'm using this term with a purpose because it will ring a bell with Annie most likely. The vanguard of European regions when it comes to economy, and they're obviously an ecosystem. And we are at the moment running a quite successful project into making an ecosystem of these ecosystems, meaning how to make them cooperate better, which is also it's also dependent on data, because obviously you have to see what you are able to make better, and for that you need a baseline and you need KPIs also to link back to what Hervé said. So this is where we are active, but this is not so much a data gathering exercise or a data analysis exercise. It is a very much on the ground exercise of making regions that are very advanced cooperate better among them. To give a very simple example, which is very close to reality, instead of building another institute for material testing in Sweden, you are sending your stuff to Italy, where there is an institute of material testing in a region you cooperate with that has enough capacity still. So from pure use of public and private money viewpoint, this is the best that you can do. Politically, this is obviously not easy because it means that the Swedish region will not build a material testing lab, which is what politicians like to do. So this is exactly where we come in to say to people, look, don't have these short-sighted approaches to this by simply, to stick with my example, build the lab because it is good for your politics. Refrain from doing it, do something else with the money, and rather make sure that people can use the capacity in another region, or to stick with your terminology, in another cluster.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
Andre. Annie, so do you have now some kind of measures, dimensions, KPIs or are you thinking about them?
Well, we are now thinking on including more than just added economic value for the evaluation of research projects. So we are doing an exercise. So we are just starting it. So it's just to have more ideas to bring in our own exercise. But we don't have yet a list of indicators. But we believe very strong that the ecosystem and the participation to ecosystems or membership to clusters or somehow this needs to be considered as well when we evaluate research projects from a single company or from a group of companies.
Yeah, because we are speaking out make our value chains more resilient and more flexible, but we need to measure that. For me, it's very clear that it's a very interesting area of collaboration. Celine or Athanasios, would you comment on that? Because you have also a very academic approach to this point.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I listened with a lot of interest, and the question came to me, you know, when there is data in any form and you try to condense it with various indicators, this is like a data reduction. To what extent are all these indicators independent from each other, or to put it another way, is there, to have many indicators, maybe it is good, but also it could be confusing. Is there any way that we can imagine a kind of principal component analysis in that space where we can come up with 2, 3, or 4 independent dimensions that already convey the information? I don't know if there is any relevant work that has been done, but what really came to me when I was listening all of this, and you know, the hunt for many indicators, it could be that maybe this deserves some attention, to look at the particular definitions and maybe come up with a reduced set, like a kind of principal indicators that would make any other indicator a kind of function of this, and then maybe we could have a more easy way to communicate.
I like the idea of use PCA for the analysis, but you need to first take the complex data, no, to gather them, I think.
I came with this. I mean, one of the speakers, he said there is this huge Excel sheet that has in it a lot of data and a lot of information. So I think by looking at it, maybe one could get some inspiration and think on how to search for this principal component, or however we would like to name them.
The problem is that those data are not measuring the relationship between companies, if I am not mistaken.
Just to react quickly on that, so we do already do a principal component analysis for the 100 indicators. That's why we group them into 9 or 10 dimensions. So it's the Joint Research Center of the European Commission who does all the statistical analysis of it. And we also have on the website detailed methodological notes on how the statistical coherency and relevancy is being addressed. So in general, I think we are doing this, but of course there's always ways to improve it, and we may well have too many dimensions, or some indicators may not actually fit as well as we would hope. But in principle, we are well aware of the pitfalls and are trying to address them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Antonio.
Just one moment, Celine. You wanted to?
I think it's very interesting to cross different approaches as this one at national level, because national policies are very critical for firms' performance, but also the regional both policies, but also coherence. And so I think that it's interesting to speak about the ecosystem at the same time of national level, and then to cross both scales that are not totally embedded, because some value chain will go from a country to another one, and will benefit from different policies, and they will have a kind of cascading effect or diffusion effect on the different linkages. So, and the large companies, they benefit of these different policies actually, and they articulate inside their own group the different kind of policies. So I think that it is an important dimension that we have to cross with the approach on clusters, or let's say ecosystems. But I always have not a problem, but it's an issue to define these ecosystems and to also to have data on the value chains. But I have a question. What about all the, well, I am working more on research, and I watch regularly the different calls, and I saw so many calls in Europe for research to develop for SMEs and enterprises their digitalization of value chain. What is the possibility to access to this data? This is a very big issue to work at the regional and ecosystem levels.
If I may, in general, if it's the result of a call for a research project or for scientific reports, they're all published afterwards, because that's also a budgetary obligation. Obviously, we buy something and then we have to publish it. If it was for research projects itself, then it obviously takes a moment, as you very well know, and it's a longer process. But in principle, everything is published by the Commission, that the Commission pays for as a consultancy work, or as a preparation for future policy actions, or also as a research project.
Yes, but is there an action, an effort to collect and homogenize in a way these different value chains that are produced by different sectors? As you said, very interestingly, that what is interesting is how different ecosystems are linked each other and how different sectors. So the main issue is to cross them and to collect data of all of them, and to try to use them as a tool for policies.
You mean as a meta-analysis in a way?
Yeah.
Well, the SME performance review, Marcus, interrupt me if I'm driving us into a corner, is in part a meta-analysis, because as Marcus pointed out, we're trying to base ourselves not only on our own data collection, but also on already existing data collection processes, not only to save money and time, but also to enlarge the field of, or the sort of the basis for our analysis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jorge, I think that Jorge wanted to speak, but he's not with us now. Okay. Anyone else?
Otherwise, Antonio, I would have two small points I wanted to make before closing, if I may. For one, would you give me briefly the presentation rights? I just want to show you something, how the SME performance, respectively, the fact sheets that we do per country actually look like. It gives you a bit of an idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, you have it.
Thank you. Okay. It's a very crude method because we are on different means. This is simply the cover report. This is not an awful lot, but this is the cover page for the report. So it's a completely printed report. But here are the so-called fact sheets. We have for every EU country what we call an SBA fact sheet. SBA stands for Small Business Act, but never mind that. This is the 2019 version. You have all sorts of data. You have graphical presentations also that allow you per country. It's all on the website that Marcus put in the general chat. That allow you per country to look how they look like and also compare them with each other, but also in themselves over the years. So that's it's I think 2 or 3 pages. Some are a bit longer, which is quite handy. Obviously, it's also handy for the media because it allows you to quickly find a nice quote. Thank you. You can take away the presenter rights from me. That was just what I wanted to show you.
Okay.
And the second point I wanted to make is you mentioned, Antonio, resilience of value chains. In the roadmap to recovery that the European Council and the Commission published some 10 days ago, there is talk about a so-called rapid alert function, rapid alert to disruptions of supply chains. And this is obviously linked to the resilience. So if there are disruptions, that means they were not resilient enough. And this rapid alert functions, to this also the SME envoy network, but also the business organizations are asked to contribute. So this is another reason why we are interested in what really goes on the ground, because in Europe we generally lack a little bit information about our value chains as on a sort of meta level. Some value chains we know very well, others we don't. And as we all know, some problems with value chains have been discovered in a very brutal way over the last few weeks. So this is obviously where this idea with the rapid alert function comes from. Thank you.
Yeah, we are studying the possibility to create, the Professor Athanasios give us a very, very interesting point of view some days ago. Let me show you the slide. Yeah, here. I think that this will be now in the screen. Okay, I don't know why it's not showing. Let me go quickly to it. Here. No. Here. Okay, so we are thinking about identifying ecosystem, co-evolving ecosystem, and one of the main point will be to identify those companies that can cross-link ecosystem, the key storing spaces that Athanasios called. Okay, so we are thinking about the possibility to, in this group, okay, in this European Alliance Against Coronavirus, to organize some kind of not subgroups, because we don't want to call them subgroups, but nodes, okay, of experts, curators that Athanasios said, curators that could join and ask the value chains for the main problems, the main missing links, the weakest points, or the special needs from companies, or companies in danger of being bought by the external countries. Okay, that is the approach that we have now in mind, and for sure we will report to you everything that we could find. That's the idea, not to analyze companies, islands, or specific areas, neither only the specific ecosystem as isolated systems, but to try to have a holistic view of all the co-evolving ecosystems in Europe, if possible. Okay, Professor Marco, sorry, no, Professor, what is the name, Ilaria? Sorry, I forgot.
Mario Calderini.
Mario Ponderini gave us an excellent example of this kind of analysis, okay, taking in account how changes in one dimension could affect another dimensions. The idea is the same, how changes in one ecosystem could affect others, or how some companies could affect different ones. Okay, that's the approach that we are thinking about. Okay, it will be done through a combination of expert groups, so qualitative approach, discussion, the conference, but also with if you agree, if the Euro agree, with a kind of questionnaire that will be objective and will ask for them for the problems, but not only for problems, but also for opportunities to provide to others resources or materials that are the exit, not non-desired exit on one process could be used in a circular economy flow on other ecosystem. That's the approach that we have in mind. I don't know if somebody wants to comment on that, Dolores or Athanasios or Ilaria or Celine.
Otherwise, I would just
wanted to say that I am very happy to see that you have adopted this point of view. I think this is now something in the making, and definitely the input from the SME envoys that are very close to the data generation and the information that they have would be absolutely very crucial for this.
But I can only say that we're very happy to get whatever comes up in this context. I would just caution about one thing, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but if it comes a little bit from an earlier job that I had this view, asking companies with questionnaires about strategic issues and problems is always a very double-edged sword, and a very sharp double-edged sword, because when you ask certain questions, you actually reveal more by the questions that you ask than you ought to. And the answers reveal then even more. So we have to be rather careful with this approach. When we're talking about strategic value chains, we mean strategically important for the EU. If it's about masks and stuff like that, this is very important, but perhaps not yet in the strategic sense that I mean. We're talking about some things that are certainly not for the public domain, and this is why we have to be rather careful with this stuff. Also, because there is a political dimension to it. There's the technical information. Certain things are strategically important. Certain value chains are strategically important. Full stop. And there is agreement. Then you have this gray zone where some think it's strategically important, others don't. But what we don't have really is the arsenal, the political and legal arsenal in place to prevent what Antonio briefly referred to, that those companies that are strategic in one way or another are then just simply bought up by others without quoting who these others may be. So we need also that arsenal, and that arsenal is not in place. And therefore, we have to be even more careful in defining what is strategic and making this known to everybody.
Oh, okay, for sure there is information that should not be known for everybody. I think that's clear. Celine.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. It's very interesting. I think that the strategic sectors or value chain, some are very strategic at the European level, others are very strategic in some national levels, other at the regional, and others at the very local cluster ecosystem levels. So maybe that it's not one set of strategies that must be focused, but different set of strategies and maybe also their combination at different scales. Because I think that strategies are different at the different scales.
Okay, it's 9:30. It has been a very interesting point. It's the first request, I think, is very clear from you, from the SMEs envoys, is to act as antennas for them, okay, about how are the measures implemented, and that's very important. We will collaborate with you on that area. That's very clear, okay. We will see how best to do it, okay, but you can count with our collaboration. The second big topic for today, I think, it has been the possibility to measure resilience and ecosystems. But first, ecosystems, or cluster could be, or industrial ecosystem, and second, between the measures, the resilience and flexibility on those ecosystems. Something that we should think about. I understand. Okay, that's my impression. Andre, would you close with your comment?
Oh, that's I'm honored. Thank you very much for giving us the possibility. Feel free to contact us, Marcus or me, or any other colleagues. We're happy to pass the things on. I'm very much looking forward from the ground information, and I'm very much looking forward also for listening to what Annie also referred to, which is the KPIs and so on for ecosystems and clusters. That's going to be a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for your time.
That remember me. Please, we will share this information in the ECCP COVID-19 Forum, and we can have also some public discussion in that forum if it makes sense to make the discussion public. Okay, but that could be good because there are people that could learn from that discussion in the European environment. Okay, so please share your ideas, opinions, or contributions. Okay, thank you. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow we will speak about Turing.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Antonio.
Bye.
Adios.
Thank you, Antonio.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.